Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We welcome you all to our virtual coaching session, a part of our HiPo Week series on measuring high potentials ROI. High Potential Week is an annual initiative taken up by People Matters along with Right Management, and this is the second year in a row running for this unique initiative. We thank you for the overwhelming response that we have received for this initiative this year. People Matters, along with Right Management, collaboratively organized this unique special annual initiative, the HiPo Week, helping organizations to decipher the right way to identify and develop high potentials within their teams. This has been the gateway for all of you to get answers to your queries in this arena. Right Management is a global leader in talent management and career management workforce solutions within the Manpower Group. The firm designs and delivers solutions to align talent strategy with the business strategy. With over 3,500 employees working out of more than 300 service locations in over 50 countries around the world, Right Management has the skills and resources in place to solve workforce management challenges and help grow talent, reduce costs, and accelerate performance. Within the week from the 12th till the 16th of May, we brought to you a series of events including video launches, webinars, content-focused newsletters, tweet chats, radio programs, virtual coaching sessions, as well as a masterclass in Bangalore. You followed us at hashtag HiPoWeek for updates. You could also follow us at the same hashtag and visit the website peoplematters.in/HiPo for more details. For today's session, which is going to be on the approach to measure high potential ROI, we have with us Rohtash Mal, Executive Coach for Right Management India, along with Premraj Pillai, Senior Consultant, Right Management. This webinar will offer insights on how do you notify your people if they are a high potential or not, how do you ensure stickiness to the high potential program that you've designed, as well as measuring their ROI. With that, without any further ado, let me hand it over to Tuhina Panda from Right Management. Over to you, Tuhina.
Thank you, Puneet. A warm welcome and good morning to everyone who has joined us today for our second virtual coaching session of the HiPo Week. We are very excited to host this session for everyone today. As Puneet shared, the HiPo Week is a unique event initiated by Right Management that is dedicated to the high potential leader development journey. And through this entire past week from 12th to 16th, as Puneet had shared, we wanted to share different perspectives and stories with you of various stakeholders who are involved in the HiPo program, from clients, business leaders, coaches, and high potential employees. Last year's focus for our HiPo Week was on the different phases of the high potential development process. And this year we wanted to provide a different perspective on the viewpoints from different stakeholders and the challenges and benefits that they face going through this entire process. For today's session, the objective is to kind of share best practices on coaching high potentials. As most of us would be aware that a high potential leader development journey is quite intense and focused. The coaching process is known to significantly aid and strengthen the learning of the leader by providing the high potential with a strong sounding board, one who brings years of experience in the world of work and maybe even personal experience as a high potential themselves. So for today, we would like to address the key challenges and questions that a high potential may face in their journey and how does coaching actually address them. The other agenda points that we would be covering today are on key ROI parameters that can be considered. So through the entire journey of the high potentials journey on the high potential process, what happens is across different phases, there are different types of challenges that may be faced by the high potential, by the business sponsor, by the program manager who would be leading the assignment, and also the other stakeholders which might be involved in any part of the process. So, from a coach's perspective, we would like to share a viewpoint on what happens during notification, retention, how do we kind of measure the ROI of the HiPo program, how do we keep it relevant for today's day and age, and how do we ensure that there is a synergy maintained on the HiPo focus which is aligned to the organizational objectives. So, for today's session, we have with us two very very well known experts with us on who will talk to us about the field of hypertension development and also talk about the possible perspectives that they have faced in their careers. So to start with, I would like to introduce Mr. Rohtash Mal. He is an senior business leader and executive coach who plays an advisory role for domestic and global organizations. He has held C-suite positions in organizations such as Escorts, Bharti Field Fresh, and Maruti Suzuki in the past. His diverse industry experience lends him an expert insight into activities such as turnaround management, building organizations from scratch, market strategy and implementation, environment management, and other areas like in the field of political and regulatory issues, international collaborations and joint ventures, developing leadership pipeline, and more. He currently also is affiliated to various industry bodies where he serves as an advisor. Prem Raj is an executive coach and senior leadership facilitator with Right Management. He brings in rich and varied corporate experience with over 15 years in consulting for strategy, business conceptualization development, business process re-engineering, and other areas across industries like manufacturing, technology, pharma, retail, healthcare, and more. Premraj has experience in aligning organizational processes and human capital to business growth. He has worked on organization restructuring, development of performance indicators, change management projects, and much more. Prior to his experience with working with Right Management, he worked with EY, Citi Group, CSC, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. With this, I would like to pass it on to Prem Raj to start the session and share a little bit about the context of today's discussion, the key themes that we would be covering, and then Rohtash and Prem Raj would address key questions across those themes. Thank you. Over to you, Prem Raj.
Thank you, Tuvina. Good morning, everyone. I am tremendously excited to be part of the HiPo celebration and be able to run this program from Right Management. As we've already discussed, this is the second in the series of 2 virtual coaching sessions. The first was run with Ms. Nilanjana Paul, who is again an executive coach with us, and it dealt with the expectations and challenges faced by HiPos in the corporates. Today, we are moving beyond to speak on the business perspective with respect to the HiPo identification and the development initiative. Now, given that every investment in this business justifies a return, it has been an oft-repeated concern about, what is my ROI from the HiPo ID and, development exercise. And we take this opportunity to examine this issue from various angles. And in order to help us out with that, we are proud to have Mr. Rohtash Mal with us. Welcome, Rohtash. Together, we will be examining this very important topic across, couple of key angles. So, to start off with, one thing that we would definitely be looking at is the very important question of notification. So, you've identified a HiPo, should I notify, should I not? So, we'll be looking at that angle from more or less, what are the possible pitfalls that can come in there, and maybe what needs to be done from that perspective. And moving on to the very important question of how to ensure the stickiness of HiPos, right? And going forward from that angle, we identified that core issue that it's always there in our mind in terms of, given the investment that I'm seeing in the HiPos, HiPo identification, in the HiPo development, when am I going to see the returns? What am I going to see as the returns, if any? Then how do I keep it relevant in view of the changing environment? It's so dynamic. And how do I synergize that with my organizational practices? So we will take each one of these elements, each one of these topics in great detail as we go forward. And to start off with, we would like to sort of go with the first point, which is notification, right? And that has always been an oft wondered theme as to, I have identified that this person is a HiPo for me. Now, should I notify him? Should I not notify him? And definitely he's beaten so many others to the post. What do I do with those who could not make the cut? What do I do with the rest of the organization? So, we would like to just take it forward step by step and, together with Rohtash, let us try to identify if we can sort of get some answers to that. So the first question, Rohtash, here that we would like to just ask is, we've got this question that I have run a HiPo identification exercise in my organization. Now, given the environment where there are plenty of opportunities and there is always increased mobility and talent demand, the key question that is coming out is, should we notify the identified talent that they are now HiPos? In view of the fact that if I let them know, is there a danger of them suddenly getting what we may call, an increased demand and, them becoming more difficult to retain? Over to you, Rohtash.
Thank you, and a pleasure being on this call. I'm delighted to be here, actually. More so because this is out of a series of similar situations I've faced in my career. But more importantly, I believe that the man management of the talent management process is crucial more than ever before to organizational success. But I would like to raise one or two alarms for you before I start answering the questions. A lot of questions that are there on the screen now and will follow are more in the nature of 0-1. Unfortunately, HR and people management, talent management is as much an art as it is a science. So please be aware that there will be a lot of ambiguity in the questions as well as in the suggested answers. And a lot of it are brushstrokes that an artist, an HR professional, talent management professional, the brushstrokes that he needs to create. So to begin with, on this particular question, I would like to enlarge the frame. The frame goes like this. There is no HiPo exercise in isolation. A HiPo exercise exists in a larger frame called organizational performance, where there is high P, high performance, high potential being looked at. On its own, high potential exercise alone, standing alone, is actually likely to cause more anxieties and problems than it is likely to solve. Having said that, if you have a larger organizational context where you're looking at high performance and high potential together, these questions become relevant, and you already have, I presume, a high performance or a performance management exercise that is concurrently running. Now, what are the things that come to mind where you are going to inform people? Now, I am putting the word inform within inverted commas. Signal to people, suggest to people, insinuate to people, nuance to people, or inform people. These are various shades of delivery. From my point of view, and in similar situations, there is only one situation that I have faced where I needed to formally inform the entire community that these are my high potential people. And that is when an organization or a company is in severe existential crisis, which means that if I do not retain these people, these 10, 15, 20 people, the organization will certainly sink. And therefore, it is important to worry about these people than to worry about the other 90% or the other 95%. Please remember, it is equally important to signal to high potential candidates as it is to signal to the other 95% people as to where they stand in the organization. And this balance is where the art really arrives at, or the art really kicks in. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
good. I need to check once in a while because I am on a GSM call. Okay, so having said that, I believe that once you have selected truly your high performance people and check that there is a correlation between high performance and high potential, and now you're talking to the high potential people, stating it, in my personal view, is not such a bright idea. Because out of this list, people will come in and go out as the years go by or as the months go by. The other 95%, the top of the other 95% will also kick into this cadre. And some of these, because of their lower performance levels or because of newer discoveries that you have about their potential, or you might discover certain behavioral issues or talent issues, or indeed you might discover attitudinal issues, they will drop out of the list. Therefore, there is no permanent list. Now, the problem with very clearly telling people that they belong to a super A category, right, creates the IAS cadre, or the cadre that considers itself superior to the others. By implication, the others are inferior. The way to probably communicate to them, not tell them, not notify. The way I'm objecting to the use of the word notify. The way to communicate with them is, you guys are great performers and you guys have immense potential, but this position will need to be created. I'm communicating this to you in a manner that I'm going to provide you accelerated responsibilities, and therefore promotions, and therefore emoluments. I'm going to provide you more learning capabilities. I'm going to give you the more prominent things to do in the organization, but it has to be done. I hate to use this word, but that's the best word I can find just now. It has to be done, this word to be used in a good sense, it has to be done in a political manner. That you have to be able to signal to them as well as the community, unmistakably signal to them as well as the community. But I would urge you not to put it down on paper, not to say it like it is. You know, the line of control, or the no man's land between this community and the rest of the community, which is 95%, and needs to be ambiguous, because you would like people to come in and you like people to go out of this. Premraj, over to you to ask a supplementary question if you wish to.
Sure. So, thank you, Rohtash, and it's been quite a detailed analysis of the same. And what we get out of that is essentially the fact that the HiPos are the heads, but we also need the hands and the legs to get the work done. So, creating a clear divide between HiPos and the non-HiPos may not be the right answer if you want to sort of get the the results going, kick in the high results. And at the same time, keeping the HiPos in the dark is also not the answer, because the key element here being that increased mobility and talent demand. So if a person gets an opportunity, the person will move on nevertheless.
Absolutely. Please balance it and use.
Exactly.
Sorry, just a supplementary. Please use the stage of your organization, the condition of your organization, as the guiding light as to what you should do. As I said, if an organization is in existential crisis, I would go to the extreme right and identify these people, because at that point of time, I don't care what happens to the other 95, I will get them. But these 5% cannot, under any circumstances, leave. If I'm running an organization that's doing well, healthy, we'd like it to get better, the troops are equally important as the leaders.
Exactly. And therefore, we need to also be scanning the environment to get a sense of, where we are standing before we can actually take a call on, what we do and how we sort of let them know that they are the cream of the cream. Right?
Absolutely.
Sure. Now, if we go forward, so from that point of view, if many times it also happens that people who have been identified as hypos, they stand up and say that, okay, I have been, as you just mentioned, Rohtash, politically let know that I am a hypo, and that's where it has ended. Now I do not know what is happening to my career. I have not seen any initiative being taken by the organization to help me grow. So the first question that definitely comes up is a sense of unease that, I have been let know. Now the question that I need to know is, nothing's been happening, and how long should I wait before I take any action, and what action should I take here?
Okay, so this probably is an easier question to answer. And the reason is that, you're asking this question from the standpoint of an individual. The underlying assumption is that the organization's HR people or people management people have not anticipated this. So what they've done is they've gone and identified these people, and the HR department has gone to sleep. Usually that will not happen, because any HR person, any talent management person would have anticipated this situation, and this situation is unlikely to arise in any self-respecting organization. In the event that such a situation does arise, oftentimes happens, people get busy, you launch an initiative, and then you're on to your next initiative, you get blindsided by many initiatives, and then you're more than likely to fall prey to this situation. In such a situation, this question becomes relevant. I would urge that if I was, let us say, it had been strongly suggested to me or told to me that I am a high potential, high performing potential kind of a guy, and both of them usually go together, please. There is never a situation where a low performance guy is a high potential guy and you're interested in him. So usually within minor degrees, these do go together. Now, I am talking about a hypo guy. Nothing has happened for the first few months. Frankly, I didn't need you to tell me that I am a high potential guy. I know it. A hypo guy always knows he's a hypo guy. I would urge this guy to go and discuss with his boss and say, buddy, you talked about this to me. You put a star on my chest. So what next? Because high potential meant that I was supposed to get better responsibilities, more challenging responsibilities. I was going to get more learning opportunities. You would have made me sweat. You're making me sweat only for 6 hours a day. I should have been sweating for 16 hours a day. I should have been developing myself. So first port of call would have to be his boss, because every boss is the primary HR manager. And, unfortunately, we give too much blame and responsibility to the HR departments and the talent management people. The boss is the first port of call. I would simultaneously go to the HR department, to the people management, and say, hey, listen, what happened? Right? Because if you don't sort of follow up on, your words with actions, you're more than likely to cause alienation not only for myself, but for the rest of that community also. So your credibility is at risk. I would say that. Lastly, let's remember that actuating potential, actuating, therefore, employability is the first bounden duty of the individual himself. It is the second duty of the organization. Remember, the organization has commercial and other goals, other larger growth, strategic other goals. But the first responsibility is for this person to himself, and that goes for any person. So I would say this guy should take charge after a respectable period of time to go and have these dialogues. And yet another dialogue. He needs to spend a few months relaxing, because usually it takes that long. It's not so easy to create models and paths forward without a lot of debate and churn. So patience would be the order of the day. But then he does need to assert himself to say, hey, listen, what happened?
Exactly, Rohtash. And one key element that did come out from this is definitely the fact that many times, organizations get so caught up in the euphoria of identifying the hypo that the key element. Hello?
They forget what to do. So it's the toy syndrome, Premraj. All of us, including various, whether it's marketing or HR or production, all professionals are constantly looking at new toys in order to, I use that word very carefully, please excuse me if I'm giving any different nuances. As professionals, we also always want new toys to play with, not merely to play with, but in the hope that they will create value. And therefore, once you've played with the toy, there's a feeling of exhilaration. That needs to be watched out for. That's a very correct thing.
And therefore, when we look at a HiPo program that an organization actually looks at, identification is just the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely.
The key element is the development. And
very
that
good.
should not be lost focus on.
Not at all. Not at all. And
now
typically, at this point, Premraj, sorry to let you to intervene. There is a certain cynicism by which a HiPo exercise is often created. I would like to alert our audience to that. HiPo exercises are usually created or often created, unfortunately, with the objective of retaining people, right? So when you do that merely with the objective of retaining people, not with the objective of developing your talent base, what tends to happen is you will take certain actions like identifying, announcing, so on, such that these symbolisms, these symbolic activities become, let's say, threads by which you tie down people. And these threads don't last very long, they break very easily.
And very right, and that brings us to the next question in terms of the fact that from a practitioner angle, as you said, if I'm running a HiPo from the point of view of retention, I'm continuously in fear of this key question that, letting a HiPo know that, he or she is a HiPo, would it lead to an increase in attrition in my organization? Because they get that extra confidence, and therefore they are able to leverage this element, this identification process, to get greater opportunities out into the market. So how should they go about it?
Good question, because under this question there is yet another question. You see, when you attempt to do this and identify people, one angle, Premraj, is what you said. Now I've got a certificate to go out and negotiate for more. Very correct. There is another question, and that question is that now, by not doing anything, by barely identifying and not doing anything, you have eroded your credibility as a talent management focus, or as a company that respects its talent. You have eroded its credibility. The erosion of credibility is also directly linked to attrition. So even if the individual is not going to trade this piece of paper, if it is a piece of paper, out in the market for a better deal for himself, the erosion of credibility is good enough motivation to start looking out.
Exactly. So now the next point that would come to this, Rotash, is a key question, as we were just discussing about the retention. Because the key element being, of course, the fact that, I have sort of put in my time, my effort, my resources, my money, whatever into this entire process of, identifying people who are going to take my organization to the next level, and I have a plan for them. I have a plan for them in terms of the fact that, I would develop them, I would sort of grow them, and at a certain point I would need them to step up and, contribute to taking my organization to the next level. In that scenario, if I'm faced with situation of people leaving left, right and center, how do I actually recoup my investment? So that is where we come to the next point, which is, how do I ensure that my investment in the HiPo identification and development exercise does not go waste with their leaving the organization before we can fully realize the benefit of their skill?
So the one thing that I would urge you and the audience to think about is whether you should think about all this in extremely dry terms like investments and returns. I acknowledge that at a corporate level, at a top level, at a CEO level, some part of my mind would be looking at investment and return. But please be watchful. People are not rupees, and people are not machines that they have to be looked at as investments and returns. This is a dangerous direction that I find the HR community moving in, and it will actually, in my view, pay for these consequences. Please, but what I'm saying is, without looking at it as dryly as that, the subject is also very important. There is an investment in people development, it has to pay off, right? But please don't look at it as dryly. That's my first observation. My second observation is that people don't leave because they are HiPo and not getting enough to do, etc. People leave bosses. People join companies, but people leave bosses. The culture in the company, the climate in the company, the new responsibilities provided to these people. Please remember, when you provide new responsibilities to high potential people, doesn't it stand to reason that their higher level of performance will result in greater output for the organization? Of course it does. So therefore, to not let this go waste, not let this HiPo exercise, development exercise go waste. And we are now seeing a microcosm in the entire performance management of the organization as a whole. This is a small piece. Now, to see that it doesn't go waste, the first thing that I would encourage is constant communication in this process. You cannot communicate enough. The CEO needs to spend time in various forums, various groupings, etc. with these people alone, or mostly these people with some other people, blending it beautifully while giving prominence to these HiPos. The CEO, whose only job should be really to get performance, not to be performing. Great CEOs are never be performing CEOs, but great people in obtaining performance. He should spend a lot of time to it. Boss-subordinate relationships, extremely crucial. As I said, these people leave because of their boss. Anybody leaves because of their bosses. So watching out, the talent management or the HR department, watching out very carefully what the nuances of the relationships are between these individuals identified and their bosses, even horizontally, so constant 360 degrees, etc., and watching out for false notes and making sure that these are taken care of. Then, please remember, one of the objectives of individual objectives of a person who is identified as a high potential is to, apart from actualizing his potential through more responsibility and higher responsibility, is to add to his potential, is to add to his learning. So a calibrated method of exposure to inside and outside training programs, exposure, seminars, CII, FICCI, these conferences that obviously you don't spend your entire life doing it. 1 or 2 days a month, 10-15 days a year, these guys should be out. Then 10-15 days a year, these guys should be out in programs. Please make sure that roughly about 30 days of his lifetime in a year, apart from the 30 days he's on leave, 30 days goes into this. Therefore, this individual is only available to you for 10 or 9 months in a year. This has implications for dimensioning the organization, right? Because if you don't do this and this guy has his shoulder to the wheel for 11 and a half months, you're not serving your own interests nor the interests of this individual. Of course, then there are other things like golden handcuffs and ESOPs and stuff like that. But one of the most powerful weapons that I know is the ability of the individual, the opportunity given to the individual to enhance his own capability vertically as well as somewhat laterally.
Excellent, Rohtak. So what do I get actually out of this is two key elements, of course. One is the key importance of communication, and of course I would say communication with the point of view of having your feel of the pulse. so that you can take care of any minor irritants before they become major problems. And the second element is, as you very rightly said, having a calibrated training, or rather, I won't say training, a calibrated development process, which actually, takes a planned approach to, help these identified hypos to grow and develop their talent, right?
Absolutely.
So that brings us to the, next question, that, you have a calibrated, development program in place, and you have hypos at various stages, right, in the development process. But then, of course, given the fact that you have an eye open to the competition and the competition has an eye open to you, there are approaches made on both sides, definitely. And what actually worries me is the competition is also looking at my guys, and especially my hypos, on whom I have already, in some cases, I have gone a long way into investing. In some cases, I have just started investing, whatever. But having said that, is it a realistic expectation of me to ensure that, they will not move on, while I am still sort of taking them through this journey? And is there anything further that I can do to ensure that they stay on in the organization?
So let's now, I'm going to take you to a dry example in a moisturized situation called people management. I take you to a dry side. So assuming you're a banker and you're in the loan business, right? And to expect that there would be no bad debts would be a little unrealistic, right? Now, what do you do in order to make sure that your bad debts are within limits? What you do is you look at the quality of the customer. You could look at the quality of the project that you are lending to, etc., etc. And lastly, for making sure that you are covered for your risk, you keep aside 2 or 3% of the capital that you would lose every year and put it back into the cost of interest, which means that if there were no bad debts, you would be able to lend at 10%. Because there are 2% bad debts, you lend at 12.5%. Now, a similar example is here. There is no way that you are going to make sure that 100% of these people save, particularly as you go up the pyramid. 3 jobs become 2, 2 jobs become 1. Ultimately, at the CEO's level, there can only be 1 CEO. So there are 8 aspirants, and you manage to, only 1 will be promoted. Yet there are other 7 people there, out of which, if you look at the up or out policy, there is pressure from below also. For example, from level 3, there are people who need to be promoted to level 2. So essentially, you are creating pressure from below. And believe me, even at the best of organizations, it is healthy in a situation where you have a meritocracy, people are going up the ladder reasonably swiftly, and the pyramid is narrowing. It is reasonably healthy to have a few people fall off the pyramid. Now the question is, as you go up the pyramid, it is obvious, if you go to the C-suite or 1 level below, the proportion of hypos there would be predominant. So anything that you lose will be hypo. So firstly, please be aware that this is the law of nature. There's not much you can do about it. But to go back to what I said a little while ago, for people that you don't want to lose under any circumstances, pressure from below or otherwise. For example, in a paper company, you have a domain expert who's a pulp expert. Or in a hotel, you have, let's say, the Moria in Delhi, the chef of what is the name of the restaurant? Let's say the famous Bukhara. So the chef of the Bukhara is one of a kind. I would make sure that the chef then is protected so well that he can't go anywhere else. And in some cases, that chef actually is paid more than the chief executive of the hotel itself. Right? So, if there are replicable or replaceable resources who are high potential, you do have a calibrated strategy of holding on to them. If there are irreplaceable resources, then by definition, an irreplaceable source doesn't have a price. If he wants a 6-month vacation every year, you'll agree to it, right?
Definitely. So essentially, it's a game of balance that you have to play as with everything else.
Remember what I said in the early part of this conversation, Premraj. I said I'm giving you so many variables. What I said was, please do not treat this entire exercise as a science. It's an art.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, Rohtas. And coming back to this point, it always says that it is not a realistic expectation for anyone to say that just because I've selected a HiPo, or just because I have the best interest in mind, or just because I'm doing everything right, I will have zero attrition, because that's just the law of nature.
That's unrealistic.
Having said that, exactly. And what we can maximum aim to do is sort of minimize the damage required, to a large extent identify those irreplaceable, indispensable people, and maybe even among stars there are superstars, but then superstars are very, very few in number. So trying to see if anybody that you have taken is indeed a superstar or not, right?
Let me give you, Premraj, a personal example at this stage. One of the companies that I was last involved in was in an existential crisis. At the time I reached there, it had been losing money for 10 years, and my responsibility was to turn it around. What's the first thing I would do? One of the earliest things I would do is, in the top 2 or 3 layers, identify people who I wanted to stay. I would equally well identify people who were clearly working against the interests of the organization, who I wanted them to go tomorrow. Now you do 2 things at that point in time. You fire the deadwood. Actually, we did that. On my 7th or 8th day, 110 pink slips were issued. At the same moment, before that, in fact, not the same moment, a day before that, we identified the 25-30 people that I wanted them to stay, irrespective of cost. So we gave them not all these promises, these handcuffs, pep-up talk from me personally. I told them, why is it that I had joined this company? I came in from Airtel, right? Why did I join this non-performing company, which had, in my mind, the company was a HiPo company, a high potential company. So I explained to these people why I had joined, why they should remain, why they were actually great guys, and why a lot of people needed to go. You explain your actions. And then we tied them down to a retention plan that was a 5-year retention plan and an escalating retention plan. A bonus plan that was an escalating bonus plan linked to the fortunes of the company. A promise that every year, 15 days, with the senior most management, senior vice president, so on, that I would personally make sure that they went out of the organization and absorbed the world at large. One of them actually landed up at Harvard University for a small course. The fact that their incentives were in money, but their incentives were in recognition. Some of them became spokesmen for the company, but their major incentive was going out and going to calibrated, relevant seminars all over the world. So none of these have to be done in isolation. Please remember that one day later, I am actually telling lots of people, giving them pink slips and saying, you're not required. Right? So the example that I'm pointing out here is actually quite revealing in that case. You want to make sure that the calibrated message is given. And it depends on where the organization is at that point in time. Premraj?
Excellent. So, Rohtas, the key point that came here is definitely, they require some maintenance over and above, the normal standard process, which definitely is an investment. And when we talk of investment, definitely the key element that comes is money. And that comes to the next question in terms of, how do I justify this investment, in the identification and development? Given the fact that, first question many organizations are grappling with is definitely the question of, what is the return I can look at? I've seen a lot of examples, lot of stories, all over the place. But at the end of the day, I am sort of investing in the HiPo program, right, with a viewpoint to get, certain returns. And the question is, it is still unclear in my mind that what can I expect from this entire expectation, from this entire exercise. And the second element, of course, is when can I expect it? So that is something that generally a lot of people are struggling with. So if you can give your views on this, sir.
Gladly. You will excuse me if I lighten the moment a little. We've been too serious for the last 45 minutes. So the way I'd like to do is ask the counter question. Can anybody justify to me or me to myself? And as I drive out after this, one of the first kiosks on a telephone pole that hits me as soon as I leave my colony is a kiosk that has written on it, "Drink Coke." I'd like somebody to tell me how many bottles this sells. It is an investment. Second,
definitely,
a CEO needs to deploy, depending on, let's say, Escorts was a 4,000 crore rupee company. We had a 3%, 3.5% budget for R&D. We were investing between 100 to 150 crores every year on research and development of new products that would see the light of the day. I have yet to see any scientific measurement that R&D pays except over a period of time that says, okay, over this last 10 years we've invested, let's say, 750 crores. So many new products have come out. These products have created so much. So there is a lot of hindsight, and there is, more importantly, a lot of foresight. HR, talent management, is the business of foresight. It is the subscription to an article of faith that says investment in people is good for people and business. And therefore, there is a cause-effect relationship. Your next question is about the ROI on a HiPo exercise. Now, let's look at it like this. It's like saying, here's a black box, there are 10 wires going inside, and one wire is coming out called performance. Now, all these 10 wires going inside have different levels of signals and voltages. There is marketing going in, there is product development going in, there is HR initiatives going in, there is an inspirational CEO, there is did it. So there are 10 wires going in and one wire coming out. How do you find out the cause-effect relationship? Tough job. It can be done, but please don't do it mathematically if it can't be done. Hence, when you look at the return on investment, look at the following parameters. This is what I would do in hindsight. What I would do is take a look at the improvements over a period of time in my retention numbers, in my ESAT numbers, my people engagement scores, my profitability. I would look at new product development, watch those scores, and also watch the investments that I've made, not merely in a HiPo exercise, but I've made in talent management. And I assure you that over a few years, and this is where you need a brave CEO, the guy has to be convinced in his chest to say, I think I'm making the right investment, as much as he has the insight to sign off a sheet of paper to his marketing guys to say, oh, okay, go and paint 1,500 walls this month which say, buy Escorts.
But having said that, sir, there is still one key element that comes here, that you very rightly said it is definitely not, how do I say, a short focus that we need to take in terms of, when do I see a return. But definitely there needs to be some, time period at which the CEO needs to sit and take stock as to, okay, it's been maybe, 5 years, 10 years, how many ever years it's
I
been.
would say 3 to 5 years is a good frame. You need like a good Mali, you need to put the seed, you need to put water, fertilizer, and over the space of a season, you can't expect flowers, but you can see the green shoots in about 1 month.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So there also
so you need to be
clarity on. Sorry. I was saying there also needs to be a clarity in terms of what do I want to see in the next 3 to 5 years, right?
Correct. So the CEO needs to have a vision, a business plan and a vision for few years. The problem arises, Premraj, when CEOs have tenures of 1 year and 2 years, they will by implication be short-term focused. When you are looking at answering this question and there is a signal to you as right management that when these questions which will inevitably arise and you're coming in with new initiatives, look for companies that have durable CEOs. CEOs that say as long as 3 to 6 years or 3 to 7 years, where about stable CEOs. The man is now confident after the first year or two as a CEO. He is now confident to start looking like a Mali. Earlier, the board forces a new CEO to have the mindset of a hunter. He is more output driven than input driven.
Exactly, sir. And
so the answer to your question, how long should you wait? I would say roughly 3 years is a good number to be able to carry vigorously these initiatives, and these vigorous initiatives must be judged over a 3-year span, and the CEO must not, the talent management head must not lose faith in this period of time, because as people who have gone through this set of experiences, we know that it pays off. The only trouble is that the seed has sprouted, but it is still under the soil. Now the worst way that you can check that is by digging it again, pulling the seed out to check whether it has now roots. You'll kill it.
And that's exactly where the next question comes. In terms of the fact that you very rightly mentioned that the CEO tenure itself is sort of shrinking, and therefore the visibility window is also coming down. And keeping that thing in mind from an HR practitioner perspective, who has the faith and who knows that this thing is going down the right path and it will give substantial benefits into the future. The key element again coming into the question is, is there any way that they can showcase this effectiveness on maybe a year-on-year basis where something can be shown? Is that possible, or is it something like a black box where you just keep investing and then open the box only at the end of 3 years?
Not at all. But the CEO must be. It is an inward-looking CEO, an inward-looking talent management officer. You will look for green shoots inside, and you will constantly yank out seeds that have sprouted but are still under the soil, and you will kill them. The best way to do it is look outward. Look for similar organizations within industry where the same or very similar initiatives are working. Look at the next farmer's field. Why do you have to look at your own? He's growing green capsicum. You want to grow green capsicum. Go and look at his methods in the next field. Why do you have to kill yourself digging your own field again?
Excellent. So maybe a visibility into success stories from other organizations.
Really. Take inspiration from the outside and take experiences from the outside. The problem, Premraj, with most of the professionals, and it is the psychology of the professionals that I am hoping to pinch just now, is that if it is, we call it the NIH syndrome, no? Not invented here syndrome. The point is, if I haven't invented the darn thing here, how do I justify my own existence? So the problem is the insecurity of the professional concerned. If he was a white-chested professional, he'd say, अगले फील्ड में देख लेते हैं, यहाँ क्यों कर रहे हो यार?
Exactly. So, from an HR practitioner's perspective, the practitioner should also sort of maybe keep an eye and ear out for, other organizations where the similar exercises have been successful, and maybe also sort of, ensure some face time with the senior leadership with these organizations where experiences can be shared and where they can take stock that, there at this point in time, this is where they were more like a comparative run rate, as in after 20 overs, this is how much the team was running at, and this is where you are. So you can get a comparative benefit as to, okay, are we on the right track or not?
Absolutely. The world calls it benchmarking. Yeah. Now the way to let me give you another completely different example. You obviously heard the concept of twin cities.
Yes.
There is a concept in the world called twin cities. Twin cities means that a city in the USA has a twin in Europe. Now what has happened is the mayors of the two cities got together and said, let's have fraternal relations, we are twin cities. What does that mean? It means, apart from the fact that we promote each other, you come here and see my sewage systems, I go and see there your housing systems, your house financing systems, I go see your water plant, you come and see my telecom operations. The idea is that nobody needs to invent everything. It's available, no? So two companies, similar companies, can compete in the marketplace but collaborate on issues like this. So it needs 2 or 3 mature CEOs to get together and say, hey, listen, we are facing some, you're good at this, let me send my guys and look at this. You don't think you're good at something else? I think I do this very well. Come and take a look at mine.
Excellent. Actually, that's a great idea, Rohtak. And that goes to the next element, which is also...
That idea, Premraj, can only take root. One minute before you go to the next question. That idea can only take root when the professional is confident enough to say the following. There are two situations. He goes to the CEO and says, sir, I've got this brilliant idea and I think we must do this. Or he says, sir, I saw this brilliant idea, let's implement it here. It needs a brave professional to do the second.
It needs courage.
Yeah, that's the word I'm saying. Brave, courage.
Yeah.
It says that I didn't come up with this fantastic idea, somebody else did, but I came up with the idea of copying that idea.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Exactly. It was done 5,000 years ago. Why are you going on doing it over and over again?
And that's exactly where we would like to go to the next point here, Rohtak, in the sense that we were just talking of not reinventing the wheel, and then the question coming up is, how do you keep it relevant? How do I keep the program relevant? How, the environment is changing, the business is changing, there is so much convergence in the market today. It's not even enough that you are a subject matter expert in your field, because, the competition or the person who will come and wipe you out is definitely not going to be or may not be the person in your own field. It may be a totally unrelated sector which will come and, you are no longer relevant in the market. Having, working in such a dynamic environment, how can I keep my HiPo leader development intervention relevant on a continuous basis? What do I need to do?
No one answer, but there are certain lessons. Here again, the issue of art. When all the time when you're asking the question how, and I'm not replying to you, you notice how few questions I've replied to as how. I've actually replied to you by what you can do, not the how of. So there are a couple of inspirations here. You remember a guy called Andy Grove, famous man, only the paranoid survive? Yeah?
Yes.
So the first thing is to remain paranoid, to remain watchful. Now, what does that mean in real terms? your level of engagement as a people development officer, as a talent management officer, needs to be constant. Here's another inspiration. I've been more involved in the last 5 years, 6 years in agriculture. I was in telecom and automobiles before that. If you go to the field, one of the interesting things you can find, the fields are growing, everything is fine, but the farmer still gets up at 5 o'clock and he walks the field. He just walks around. He's picking up a leaf here, he's kicking a stone there. After about 3-4 hours, he comes back, having not done a spot of work. But he's watchful. He's constantly engaged. The harvest will happen 2 months later. But he's walking the field every day. He's making sure that the soil is moist. He comes back with a few ideas every day and says, okay, I think it's hotter today. I think I'll release a little more water today. So, the only one thing I can tell a talent management professional, do not rest on your initiatives like they are laurels. Please constantly connect with people to see whether the initiatives that you had launched so long ago actually are engaged and generating new value. People are involved with not your initiative but a collective initiative. So that's the first thing I would do. Please, and why does a CEO keep taking reviews? So एक बार बोल दिया ना, अब कर दो जाके. He keeps taking reviews because there's friction on the ground. Vehicles slow down until you keep your foot on the accelerator. That's the law of nature. So please respect nature. Watch out for what you do. Engage constantly. Make sure that your foot is on the accelerator. And while doing so, be watchful of what the rest of the world is doing in the same domain that you are involved in.
So essentially a balance between an internal focus and an external focus.
Absolutely.
Always keeping an eye outside, while at the same time, keeping a pair of eyes inside as well, to see that, there is a synergy between the two. Right?
So, a parallel to what you said is the lessons from driving a car. Again, on a lighter moment, how do you drive a car? The rear view mirror is about 5% of your total field of vision. You watch it. The front windshield, depending on how fast you are driving, will determine your field of vision. And if you're a smart guy, you'll choose how fast you drive and the ability to look around left and right and behind to watch out for milestones, threats, opportunities. It's no different.
Especially in India, I think trust will do.
Make sure you have a clutch and your foot on it.
Yes.
Yes.
And therefore, going forward, keeping that synergy in mind, keeping the fact that you have to keep your program relevant to the external business needs. The question
Always.
Let's sort of again zoom into that one person, who has come to know that he is a HiPo. And there is a confusion in that person in keeping that thing in place, because the business dynamics are changing based on which, I am tweaking my HiPo process within the organization. But on the person who's become a HiPo, that person is now suddenly confused, because so far, he's been a key executor and he has been patted on the back. He or she has been patted on the back saying that, I love your execution skills and that's what I would like you to do more. But having said that, all of a sudden I am told that, okay, I need you to be more strategic in nature, I need you to develop your people skills. And as far as that person is concerned, one question that has been coming up again and again from various organizations running this program, and various HiPos have also been, why this new development? Is the organization changing? And more importantly, a sort of insecurity like, are my skills now no longer relevant? Means, am I being expected to sort of be somebody who I am not?
True. I would concur with that 100%. In addition, I would probably add one more line. I think the entire HR system, the talent management team, needs to constantly ask itself this one paranoid question. why do I exist in this organization? What value am I adding to the organization? We are talking about these HiPos adding value. Please remember that this entire process is run by the talent development and the HR team. They need to constantly ask themselves this question, why do I exist? And the answers out of that reflection are extremely bright answers. They are extremely insightful answers, and they allow you to paint in a manner that serves the interests of the organization.
Hello?
Are you there, Primarj?
Yeah, I'm there. Yes. So, means the question again here, I would like to come back to that as in, how is there any way in which, we can sort of handle this, how do I say, this insecurity that will just come in, which says that, I was a certain type, now in order to succeed in your setup, I have been made to work in a different manner, and I have changed my personality accordingly, and now you are asking me to become someone else altogether. So, the question again is that, am I now redundant? Of course, one. And number two, of course, being that, is this going to be a continuous process as to today you want strategy, tomorrow do you want me to do something else, day after tomorrow will you expect me to do something else, and how long can I sort of keep running? So, is there anything that HR perspective can be done to sort of address?
No, not only from an HR perspective. I have not essentially been giving you the HR perspective alone, but the CEO view of the HR perspective. So, frankly, if you have a confused company and a confused leader, these questions will arise without a shadow of doubt. On the assumption that the company and the CEO are not confused, seems to be a communication problem that results in these questions. If your general were to be constantly talking to the troops about the changing shape of the battle, battles keep changing, right? The environment is changing. Your business context is changing. Your challenges are changing. If you are constantly, as a good general, talking to the troops about how the environment is changing, by implication you are saying that the formation of the army needs to change, that the talent profiles and competencies need to evolve, and therefore this is an exercise in managing to handle an ever-changing battle, an ever-changing environment. Now the link is established between a changing environment and the changing me. There will never be a question about this.
And that brings me back to that first question that you answered in terms of when you said communication, and we are taking that a little bit further and saying not just communication but communication with a personal touch, right?
Personal touch, an insightful touch, the ability to respect the last person in the organization, the last Jawan in the organization, with a battle called Pakistan, if I might be politically incorrect. Why should a Jawan point his rifle in one direction and not the other? Now, when you treat the Jawan as an equal stakeholder, when the general treats his Jawan as an equal stakeholder in the battle, he talks a different language, that I understand, but he never talks a different purpose.
True. And that goes to that key element of getting the buy-in from the people, which is
absolutely,
which is a continuous process. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that sort of, okay, you've got the buy-in done, but the next question that is coming up is the fact that in the current role in which the person is, he's not having a chance to, focus on or develop these skills. I think that is to go back to that point you made in one of the earlier answers, Mutaj, in terms of having that calibrated development that goes in line with the buy-in.
Very right. There is all initiatives are in a context. The context is supreme. The context provides you purpose. The purpose provides you vision. The vision provides you a mission. And the mission provides you with strategy and tactics. The frame, therefore, is paramount. And everybody in the organization, and that's the CEO's responsibility. Unfortunately, a lot of times this lands up at the door of the HR person. As if the HR person has the responsibility for engagement scores. It's like, shooting the messenger. Sunil Mittal, while I was at Airtel, used to hold us CEOs personally responsible for engagement scores. You are the guys, the HR system is a facilitatory system. Can the General of the Indian Army say that I am not responsible for the morale of my troops or their clarity? Some HR department somewhere in the Army headquarters is responsible? Absolutely not. So, frame, context, purpose, vision, mission, tactics, strategy, and the other way around, strategy, tactics. And the last point that I made was, please do not allow your CEOs to get away with putting the monkey on your shoulder. It belongs to the CEO.
Excellent. And one more element, of course, that comes into this is, now there are a question of conflicting, I won't say conflicting, I would say multiple priorities, So there is one priority where, I'm expected to put in 120% in terms of achieving the end objective, and then there is now suddenly a new priority which requires me to change my entire way of thinking. How do I balance these two?
No, but that's not the job of the individual who has to balance this. You are obviously looking at a confused leader. Okay, let's fight a war. Okay, I'm coming up with more warlike examples today. Let's fight a war. So, I'm a second lieutenant and I've got 10 soldiers. Now, the guy turns around to me and says, start shooting left at 45 degrees. Suddenly he says, keep shooting at 45 degrees, start shooting at 135 degrees. It's not possible. The problem is not with the Jawan, the problem is with the lieutenant who is ordering these Jawans. So here is where, when you see confused organizations, start looking at their bosses, not confused people. The problem is with the bosses. And a good visual to look at, we show organization structures as pyramids. Yes, Primraj?
Yes.
Try inverting the pyramid. That old family planning wala pyramid, or the family planning example, the logo of the family planning initiative. That is what the pyramid looks like, upside down. The problem arises as you go toward the where are the bottlenecks? At the neck of the bottle. So it's not the problem with that poor man. Just look at his boss. That's where the problem is. So stop worrying about this guy. If the guy says, I'm confused, say, fine, I understand. Let's go talk to your boss.
So it is an organizational prerogative that, not only must you sort of identify the HiPo, not only must you sort of get the buy-in, not only must you, bring about the mindset acceptance for the mindset change, but also to sort of facilitate the fact that, facilitate the development process itself, as in not just put the development process in place, but also facilitate, or rather, by even if it requires maybe freeing up the identified HiPo's time to the extent that the HiPo can develop himself in that manner, you need to do that as well and not leave it completely to the HiPo to sort of deal with this question, right?
Absolutely. So here is, let's say we would do our people engagement with Gallup. Yeah. Now Gallup would provide very detailed scores, not at the peak level, not only at the peak level, all the way 5 levels down. So if I had a team more than 6 people or 5 people, I don't remember, I would get my own scores on so many parameters, right? Now it is incumbent on for that particular team leader to be reviewed by his boss and his boss's boss to say, these are your scores. What is it that you need to do in order to deconfuse your troops, in order to give them a purpose, in order to get action going? So now see this. Here you're talking about a HiPo model, and we have suddenly come up with a situation during this dialogue that we are saying the problem is not with the troops, the problem is with the lieutenant. Now how do you coach and counsel? So in the overall scheme of things, in the overall context, these things can't work in isolation. There need to be supporting mechanisms and processes to make sure that this plant that you have just planted, the seed that you have planted actually grows healthily. So you need water capability, you need fertilizer capability, you need soil turning capability, you need the sun, you need the wind. Then it will grow.
Yes. So in that
the seed has potential, right?
Exactly.
I said the seed has potential, right?
The seed, of course, has
Sorry,
potential.
two people with...
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I was saying, of course, the seed does have potential, and the point that you put on the table is very relevant. Saying that at the end of the day, it's the leadership has to shine the torch and show the road that the leadership, or rather, that the organization has put in place. But having said that, you've had so many such long experiences, both as a leader yourself and as a coach to leaders. What has been your experience with them so far? Have they faced similar expectations, and especially people who have not made the cut? How have they handled? Any examples that maybe you can share? That would be great.
One or two things stand out, Premraj. The first thing that stands out is the Peter principles applies to every level, including chief executives. So there are chief executives that are promoted beyond their capability. It's a fact of nature and accident, so we can't go away from that. But having done that, I think coaching is also about making sure that some of the things that we have discussed in this dialogue today are actually brought up in conversations with these people. That they tend to see themselves less of performers and more of people who get performance done. You see, what tends to happen is that over a period of time, the executive mindset does not go away even if a guy reaches the CEO position. And his table is still cramped with papers, he's still looking at the same Excel sheets. The best CEOs that I've seen didn't have a paper on their table. They probably didn't spend more than 10% of the time in their own offices. They were in the field, they were with people, they were getting performance done. And the only time they were in their offices was when they needed time to be by themselves and think. Those are the best CEOs. A CEO who constantly has his table full of paper is going to be a disaster sooner or later. So there is no one answer, Premraj. The fact of the matter is, over a period of time, including, I've made some stupid mistakes in my own life, and pretty bad ones too. But over a period of time, these mistakes and these coachings actually help you gain clarity to deliver and I often ask this question to CEOs and other people alike. Why are you here? Why do you exist? What is your role? What is your real delivery? Yeah? And over a period of time, insightful answers that come from within actually change the game.
Mm-hmm. So, thanks a ton, Rotash. Any other questions, Tuhina? Over to you.
Thank you, Premraj. Thank you, Rotash. I think we've answered some very critical questions today and looked at a very different perspective from the coaching point of view about high potential development programs. We do have a couple of questions which have come in. The first question has come in from Mr. Bhaskar. He asks, is it essential that such a fast-track program should result in a role change or job change for the participants?
Not necessarily. Now, it would be good. On the other hand, it may not. Again, a contextual thing. However, so here is two ways. If you're looking at a domain specialist, I referred to a situation where, you got the chef of the Bukhara in Delhi, right? His potential is to create menus of the Mughlai variety from all around the Arabic or this part of the world, and he's constantly seeking new spices and so on, right? So why would you want to change the poor man's role? You'll kill the restaurant, right? So, but he has that potential to give him all that he has to. However, if the intention of this guy, and let's look at another situation, he's a store manager, and he is showing potential of eventually becoming a large level team leader and a regional leader. I might want to say, okay, so he's running Bhopal today, let's send him to Ahmedabad. Give him a bigger role and send him to Ahmedabad, larger territory. So you enlarge his role, you don't change the role. The other way to do it is, I think this guy now is in a position to run Bhopal, run Ahmedabad, indeed run the entire western thing, and his next role is going to be a national role. I put the guy into the corporate finance department for a year and into the HR department for another year. And say, okay, I think you are now ready for a national role. All these are contextual. So there is no one answer, but there are an infinite variety of possibilities. They are developmental, but development must have a purpose, both for the company as well as for the individual. Purposeless development is no development. It will serve neither.
And to add to that, Rohtash, one more element that I would just like to bring into the picture is the fact that, yes, you may have identified the HiPo and you may be putting the HiPo on a development path, but then, there is never a guarantee that you have those role changes and those, maybe promotions that are already ready-made in place to cater to the needs of all the HiPos possible. Having said that, definitely, but these HiPos will be in the list of priority in case whenever any role change comes into the picture, because you are not going after creating a HiPo primarily for the perspective of running situation as usual in a more efficient basis. You are actually relying on your HiPos to sort of come up with your breakthrough skills, breakthrough innovations, your breakthrough performance. So definitely whenever such meaty roles do come into play, that is the time when you can sort of activate the list and, they get the first priority to go into that. But I think having an expectation that the moment a person becomes a HiPo, immediately they must change the role, I think that may not be realistic.
I agree with you. And it goes back to that thing I talked about earlier. When you look at an exercise like this merely as a retention tool or a slot filling exercise, I need to identify HiPos so I can fill my slots. Basically, you're serving a P&A role through a talent management exercise, whereas that's part of it. But your larger goal is sustained performance over years, sustained, enhanced, accelerated performance of the organization over years. Then you have a larger purpose why you look at this exercise. So to go back to Bhaskar's question, no, it's not necessary.
Okay. Thank you for your responses. And we have another question which has come through. This is from, I think, Ms. Supriya Bansal. She has asked, if we want to conduct the satisfaction survey for HiPos after 2 years to measure the effectiveness of the program run, what are the various parameters, questions to be captured in that survey? For example, she has shared, one area could be feedback on mentors and career discussions that they have had with their mentors.
Okay, so I have two questions to answer here, not one. The first one is when you conduct engagement score for your HiPos, you never ever conduct an engagement scores only for your HiPos, never. You conduct it for the organization, and The HiPos are a part of it. You can collate your data separately as to your measurement partner, whether it's Right or Gallup or whoever, will help you do that. The second thing is, as to the detailed questions asked, I think there are many models, right? You can use the Q10 model that Gallup uses, something I'm familiar with. Right would have its own model, or Great Places to Work would have its own model, etc., etc. It's like these religions are like Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, etc. They are fairly similar. Yeah, choose whichever you are comfortable with, because more or less these religions are identical, and their methodologies have all these questions built in. Of course, it starts from very basic questions, whether you're clear about your work and your boss is clear about the work that he gives you, the fact that you have everything that you need to perform your job. Is somebody thinking of your development? Has somebody spoken to you about your development? And it just goes on. It's a very comprehensive thing. So please don't, in summary, please don't look at an exercise that is limited to HiPos alone. Do it for the entire group. And of course, you can, for yourself, you can collate data out of that for the HiPos alone if you want to track their engagement scores separately. Enough?
Thank you. Premraj, would you like to add anything there?
Yes. Just one small point is, very rightly, as Rohtash just mentioned, that when you put something as elaborate as a satisfaction survey in play, just targeting the HiPos may not send the right message to the rest of the organization. But having said that, you definitely do need to have a finger on the pulse of the HiPo. And as we had discussed earlier, that that can only come through regular conversation. And if you are doing the job right, and you are going and almost on a daily basis, just generally interacting with the HiPo, you would get all the key signals that you would have liked to get at the end of 2 years. But at the end of 2 years, it may become, it may take the form of a complaint or a satisfaction indicator. If you are constantly out there on the field, it will be, you will be able to catch these much in advance, and therefore take the corrective action much before, it becomes a key dissatisfaction indicator.
Good point, Premraj.
Okay. Thank you. We have another third question which has come in. Now, this question is from Varun Mathur. Sometimes people who have high aspirations but who may not have been able to, make it to the high potential selection list may get demotivated. How do companies ensure that they do not leave, and what kind of communication should be maintained with them?
You see, from the beginning of this conversation, I have been against the caste system. I see these HiPos as a caste by themselves. I'm not too sure I want to do that. So let's see a different mechanism of doing it. Supposing you had 10 people in your organization, and even relatively you would wanted to give them performance scores, you would start from 10 and the last guy would be 1. Correct? Now, there's nothing telling the guy who got 2 on 10 that he can't aspire to be a 9 on 10. Why are we not thinking more in terms of the high potentials in the same way? But we carried out not a high potential exercise, we carried out a potential exercise, and the various scores are from 100 to 10, if you like. Now, the problem arises, your question arises in a situation where I'd like to be a Brahmin, but I'm told I'm not a Brahmin. So I've got a problem now. How do I break the wall? How do I break the ceiling? There's a certain inbuilt violence built into this paradigm. So, even if you insist that there has to be a wall, then there are communication methods like follows. For example, Hindustan Lever does this rather beautifully. It is well known that there is a list called the A-listers. Right? It is widely known as to who is in the A-lister category. right? But people drop out of that list and people fall into that list as time goes by. And that is established. So the community needs to understand that this list was not created for infinity. This list was created to, this is a list, it's like a balance sheet of the moment. A balance sheet is a photograph of the financial part of the organization at a point in time. There's nothing saying that one asset can't come into the balance sheet and another asset can't drop out of it in the next cycle. So this messaging, this queuing, this is extremely important. But the question that you raised is very, very relevant. In order to avoid demotivation, it has to be clearly understood that if you are insisting on creating the Brahmins and the Shudras, then the Shudra can aspire to be a Brahmin, and the Brahmin, if he doesn't behave himself, can drop out. And that needs to be communicated. Therefore, there is an aspiration built in, and demotivation will not happen. Tuina?
Thank you, Rohtash. Premraj, would you like to add anything to this to the question?
Premraj is so thunderstruck with the answer.
Yeah, I think unfortunately what he's done is put himself on mute, but no worries. He'll just be figuring it out. So I think yes, Premraj is back online. Just was asking, Premraj, would you like to respond to this question as well?
Yes, definitely. So just one thing that I would like to add to whatever Rohtash said is, very rightly exposed that a HiPo list is not a permanent list that you have arrived and you have arrived ever. You can arrive and you can sort of be also kicked out, definitely. But having said that, one key element that we need to also look at is the fact that if a person has made it to the HiPo list and he drops off, I think the organization needs to also, do a little bit of investigation further and deeper into why this has happened. And if there is any way by which, he can be brought back in or brought back up, I think that needs to be identified and rectified, because he was a to begin with, and therefore, it just can't be that, one day is a HiPo and the next fine day is no longer a HiPo. Your points on that, Rohtash?
I'm with you on that, because if that happens too often, it just shows that the identification system is pretty frail. So, and therefore, if it is so, it will lose its legitimacy.
Okay.
Any further questions?
No. So at this point, I think we would kind of want to close the session. I think we've answered a few. There are a few more questions, but we see some repeat questions also coming in, and I think some questions we would want to kind of take up at a on an individual basis. Okay. So with this final question, we do have few more questions which are coming in, but we'll address them individually. With this, I'd like to kind of call to close the session. Thank you very much, Rohtash. Thank you, Premraj, for taking time out today for speaking to us and sharing your perspective on high potential development. And Rohtash, I think it was an absolute pleasure to speak with you, because with the kind of experience you bring to today's conversation, from your experience of working with different organizations at a business sponsorship role as well, and now having also coached so many senior executives, the learning that we have had is more in terms of understanding how common mistakes and common perceptions that might be there in organizations need to be very carefully addressed through proper communication through the entire initiative. And also that when we are talking about ROI of HiPo programs, the first point that we must always remember is when you're considering your parameters or when you're considering your the key measures that you want to think of, the organizational context, the business environment, the culture of the organization are very critical to be thought of in while identifying those. And for each organization, the parameters would be different, and hence, there is not going to be just a select set which you can just mention and just tick off on your list. And Premraj, thank you as well for joining us today and moderating this entire conversation. So with this, thank you, participants.
Thank you, Tohina. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I enjoyed myself. A very incisive presentation, extremely incisive questions. And Premraj, kudos to you for provoking me so often. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sohina.
So, thank you. So, we hope the session has been insightful and helped answer many questions for the audience and about the role of key stakeholders in this entire process. Thank you, People Matters, for hosting this session for us, and we look forward to having the audience join in our future sessions. Over to you, Puneet.
Thank you, Tohina. And with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up this virtual coaching session today. We would like to thank our partner in this initiative, Right Management. A special thank you to Rohtash Mal and Premraj Pillai for taking out time from their busy schedules and sharing with us their experiences and insights. Would like to thank everybody in the webinar audience for participating in today's presentation. Keep following us at the hashtag HiPoWeek for updates, as well as do visit the website peoplematters.in/HiPo for complete details around this initiative. That concludes today's webcast. Thank you so much, guys, and have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.